That mic down there a little. Good.
Did it light up?
No. Oh, here we go. There we go.
Now we're good.
Ooh, that's way too close. Hi, thanks for attending the movie. So I'm Bill Mealy, and I am the non-wrestler in this group. I am the principal at Second Start Alternative High School right here in Concord. And I guess I'm here really because of the struggles really that these students are facing. Very similar to really the kids that I work with. The timing of this film being unfortunately not wrestling season, but it is the beginning of Mental Health Awareness Month. So in a lot of ways I think this movie really fits that theme as much as it does the wrestling. I think a lot of what we saw with the students are a lot of the struggles that we saw with those kids. There's a lot of trauma that these boys are recovering from. They allude to it, they really don't dig into it, but you see it. And you know, in the case of Mario, you know, he is literally asking for help. He is literally telling the adults in his life that I need help. What kind of help? Mental help. I need to talk to someone. And by and large, that mostly gets ignored. So, you know, that's a huge piece of why May is Mental Health Awareness Month, because we need to start being able to recognize these things and get these young people and everybody the help that they need. Just a couple of takeaways for me that I thought were pretty amazing, but this team and this coach really provides hope for these kids. And that's the whole key is you know, hope is kind of humanity's fuel. It keeps these kids alive. And in the end, you heard one of the boys talk about, that's just history, and I don't care about history, we're moving forward. You know, and that's kind of, he's embodying that idea of that spirit of hope, which is pretty huge. Some of the other little things that I think were huge takeaways for me on the non-wrestling side were the ways that different supports really change those kids. You can see when they get Jamario's grandfather involved, he goes from being in a horrible mood to just, he's already smiling just talking to the guy on the phone, never mind before he gets in the car. Same thing when they get mom to go and support him and show up at the state tournament. Huge difference. The other place that we saw that was when Teague screwed up, and you know, they left it to the boys. It was pretty amazing to me that the boys kind of, they felt out the situation. You could hear them banter. You could hear them talking about, do we punish him? Do we go after him? Do we beat him up? What do we do? And in the end, they do the thing that will get him to respond, which is they kind of chew him out. They make him take responsibility for his actions, but then they show him a lot of love and they pull him in and they continue to make him part of their group and give him that love and support. And that's what got the response from him. These kids have had punishment all their lives, and it doesn't, all they've learned is to react or to run. The other huge piece with Jamario, for me, with the mental health piece is, you see him constantly, you can see when he's locked in, when he's engaged, he's an amazing young man. And then when he struggles, you can see that that's really a traumatic reaction. It's a trauma reaction. He's going either into his fight or flight or really his freeze response. And the fact that people just don't recognize when he goes there and don't know how to work with that, and that's what needs to change. You saw, and I hate to say it, but I feel like I was having some flashbacks, but you know, when the coach goes after him and he's focused on, you just disrespected me in front of the team, and they go out and they end up wrestling in the schoolyard. And really all Ro's trying to do at that point is escape. The kid just needs, he's overwhelmed with his emotions and he just needs some space. But being able to read that is really difficult, it's really hard, it takes understanding. And that's what May, for me, is all about, is really starting to understand mental illness and especially trauma. We saw these boys react in strange ways. I think for most of us, we would look at, why would they react that way to that situation? And that comes from their trauma background. They have different reactions to things, and that needs to be a signal to us that there's something wrong. But we're not aware of it. So hey, here we are in May. let's start to be aware of these kind of things. So that's it. That's my takeaway. That's my reaction. We're going to have these wrestling men give their reaction and then kind of open it up to you guys to just throw out your thoughts and your concerns and your comments and any questions that you have.
So my name is Nick Zaris. I am an assistant wrestling coach at Concord High. I wrestled at Concord High, went on to wrestle in college, and I am the director of USA Wrestling, which is the Olympic freestyle and Greco-Roman style wrestling in the state of New Hampshire. I will say the biggest thing when I previewed this movie and watching it even again tonight, the biggest takeaway is the mental health aspect. That these kids, have had trauma, that they've had a difficult life. It doesn't have to be wrestling that pulls them into it, but I will say there's something about wrestling that does do it. I can only attest to the number of kids that we've had at Concord High School and just that I've heard about around the state that have had a trauma-filled life or a background that has it, and that wrestling, no matter what, and these guys will attest to it, there is a brotherhood aspect to it, where you've all been through the same thing that other guys have been through at the same time. And it's a family. As much as it's an individual sport, you do feel a big sense of family if you're doing the sport. I think they just alluded to it a little bit with the mental health stuff, that it takes a village. I mean, Jamario it seemed like other teachers and possibly guidance counselors, assistant principals were working to try to help this kid graduate, try to push through to make it to the next level. So it's a powerful movie. It doesn't just, it touches a lot of the kids. I also coach track and field. I know a lot of my wife's helped coach with the cheerleading team, and a lot of the refugee kids in Concord specifically that have had some trauma in their life. You can see it. This is a perfect example of what's gone on in their life. And it's not just those kids though. It's a lot of the kids. There's a lot of kids like Teague who are self-medicating. I mean, he starts the movie saying, I'm on 4 meds and I don't take them. But instead he's choosing to smoke a lot of dope. So that's how he's choosing to self-medicate. And it's something that, overall, I think as coaches, I think Brock would attest to that he's seen it. That it's something you're always kind of watching for and looking out for, and just trying to pick up the early signs as soon as possible so you can get some help for the kids ahead of time.
So I'm Brock Hoffman, the head coach at Bow High School, and my biggest takeaway is I was watching how the coach handled every situation, and I guess as I'm watching the movie, I put myself in the coach's shoes. I'm like, what would I do in that situation? And I believe the coach was a little bit younger. It was 28, and like the wrestling in the grass, and I see a lot of similarities. Even Huntsville, Alabama, Bow, New Hampshire, obviously two different places, but the sport's the same, and that's kind of what Tiny said, that we once you're in that grind and you go through wrestling, there's not too many other sports like it. I saw a lot of similarities, even though. It is from Huntsville, Alabama. The coaching was the biggest part that I was watching of how to handle the situations, and watching the kids' reactions, and watching the team come together and how the team communicate with each other. I thought it was great. I thought it brings. It's hard it's like not everyone here wore a sauna suit that can open it up and have the sweat drip out of it. So there's some things that I really got connected with the movie, and I think Tiny's right. Wrestling brings out a whole nother level of emotion, whether it's aggression, happiness, sadness. It just skyrockets those emotions. The sport just pushes you to a whole nother level. And where you got to know how, as a coach or as a peer, you have to know how to handle that the proper way. And maybe he should have gave Jamario a break when he just needed to walk away. Sometimes you just need to walk away. But as a young coach, especially when you're trying to build a program, because Bo was not always the best. So as a young coach, you're hungry. You want to get in their face. You want to steer these guys in the right direction. But as now looking as a little bit older, I'm like, I would have let him walk. But you have to learn that. So it was watching him grow as a coach throughout the year too. I thought was special.
I thought the movie was pretty good. It was great how it showed the physical and mental aspect of the sport. Just like chasing after a state championship. Bo did the same thing this year. It was tough to get there. There was a lot of problems that occurred, and I thought that it was great seeing the team work over those problems and conquer them to chase their goal and conquer it. So I thought that was pretty good. Again, what Brock said, I pick out a lot of similarities with like the coaching aspect and how their coach was a lot like ours, chasing after us, making sure we're doing what we're supposed to and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
One of the other takeaways for me was obviously these boys were lacking male role models, and when they were kind of chewing out their coach, and it felt like they almost were naming off every male role model that was missing in their life. You think you're my grandpa, you think you're my cop, you think you this. Because he's trying to fill all of those roles for those boys. And that was kind of a neat moment for me, because it's almost like without recognizing it, they're recognizing it, and that was really interesting. But also, you know, like Brock was saying about the coach, and he's a young guy, and a lot of us get into these fields. I coached for a long, long time before I went into administration, and we jump into these things young and raw and with so little training. It all comes just from growing and doing it. You know, and I think we probably all go back into our younger years in our career and think back about some of those kids that we worked with, and it's like, oh God, what I could do with that kid now, knowing what I know now. So there's always more learning and training that I think our teachers and our coaches can do, and what needs to happen, what needs to get rounded out in that training, and especially even for educators, is just to understand more the psychology of development and of trauma. Because, you know, those of us that went through teaching programs, generally they don't touch on that stuff at all. Especially if you're going into being a high school teacher, they're going to really focus on your content. And unfortunately, we don't focus on the kids who are in front of us. And it's more about the kid than it is about your algebra or your chemistry, quite frankly. Any audience? I guess I'll be the runner.
Oh, wait, we have.
You're the runner. All right, we got a runner. Thank you.
Hi. I think the other great thing about wrestling is it's a long season. So you guys get to really know your wrestlers, and they really get to be that family. I think the other thing about the coach in this movie is he too has lived some of it, and so could really appreciate where those young guys were coming from. So I think that made a big difference. And yes, I would say that there needs to be more training, but the big thing for that coach was he was present to all of those boys, and that's what made the difference. And that's what's wonderful about sports.
Is this one? Yeah. I would like just to add, if you do notice, even right after the whole situation where Coach had his situation with Jamario, even in the schoolyard stuff, he's like, all right, let's go, grab your stuff, let's go. And then he's driving him home. You know, he's got him in the back of the car. And then he's late, you know, next scene, he's bringing him a coat and asking him what's going on, what's the problems, like, what are we gonna do? You know, we gotta move on from this. Jamario tries to say, you know, he's not my dad, I haven't had my dad in my life for all these years. He thinks he came at him wrong in that time. It's not saying he wouldn't have hit it right on a different time, doing the same type of thing. You know, just unfortunately, as you saw in the movie, Jamario was up and down all over the place. So, you know, I'm sure the you know, more experience from the coach, more years, obviously, but also just, you know, more time, you know, getting to know Jamario specifically. I mean, didn't seem like this was brand new, but at the same time, it seemed like Jamario's world was kind of crashing in on him at the same time. The idea of trying to graduate high school, suddenly having his girlfriend being pregnant, everything was just kind of pushing on him more this year probably than it had in the past, which was creating probably bigger mood swings. And so that, you know, required probably a little bit different approach from the coach than what he would have done in the past, so.
I agree with both of you. I think it's so great, and the key really there is that, you know, even when he's struggling and even when he's making mistakes, he's always there for him. He never, sorry, he's always there for those boys, and he's always given them his best, regardless of whether it's the best thing, you know, and that's what works for those boys, because they know they can trust him. He's not going to quit on them. He's not going to leave them high and dry. Even when they literally have a fight in the schoolyard, he ends up in his car, you know, and that's the key. Anybody else?
Questions, comments?
Mark, what do you think?
I did just want to push back on that a little bit. You know, at the end of the movie when they're summing up, they basically, you know, they say that that coach stayed for one more year and then he went to law school. So I think these boys, you know, fear that these people don't stay in their lives, turned out to be pretty valid. And I think maybe we're, you know, hopefully not glossing over some of these systematic issues that you see these boys having to address, and even trying to explain that to their coach who doesn't understand, you know, that whole incident with the police officer. I don't think probably any of us have ever had to deal with something like that. So, you know, that's not really, we're talking about mental health, but I hope we don't, you know, gloss over some of those other issues and some of the real challenges that these boys were facing.
Yeah, and I think, and we see also that they end up closing the school. I think within 2 years. So I think the coach was there for one more year, and then the school closes. And I definitely agree. Yeah, I can't say I've ever had an interaction with a police officer like that.
I was just going to add too. I've been doing this now for 17 years, and you know, it is difficult. If you haven't done it, if you haven't been through a program, you know, coaching, you get waves of kids that come along and they're special, and then suddenly they're all gone, and then you try to rebuild all over again, and you get another group that comes along and they're special, and then they're gone because they graduate and they move on, and then you start all over again, and it's demanding. I mean, from the coaching perspective, I mean, you know, he even admitted he was basically trying to sink himself into his teaching and his coaching as a way to replace the addiction in his life that he was trying to not go back to doing all those, you know, I don't know if he was just drinking or if he was getting high in other ways, but, you know, he was using it as a way to move forward, and maybe it was his own form of therapy that he was choosing to do that with, I don't know.